The recent death of well-known Fijian journalist Losana McGowan has left her colleagues in mourning. She is remembered by many as a bubbly and energetic person. Fiji Women's Rights Movement Program Director Tara Chetty describes McGowan as someone who is diligent in her work.
Even as student journalist, she was very diligent, very reliable, because she was very interested in the work, very interested in other people, very interested in talking with people. That's a key personality attribute that makes you really passionate about the stories that you do, and that makes you produce really good work. She had a very distinctive laugh that was very contagious. Just a bright, bubbly personality. Didn't shy away from talking, just someone who kind of brightened up the world around her.
Former teacher of McGowan and Victoria University senior lecturer Teresia Teaiwa reflects on the student she remembers.
When I think of her as part of this really vibrant cohort of students that asked a lot of questions, that were really critical, engaged, and just really exciting thinkers.
But with the coverage of her passing in the media, more work is needed to educate the public on violence against women.
There's been strong attention to the case, which has been good. I think that probably there needs to be a lot more follow-up, in-depth work done. But understandably, those who are doing the coverage, many of them also know her, and so there's that added complication where perhaps they're struggling through the grief, and there needs to be further work linking how we can now address the broader issues of violence against women, gender-based violence that Losana's death has thrown up for us as a community.
A 2013 report published by the Fiji Women's Crisis Centre showed alarming figures for violence against women and girls in Fiji. And Chetty says it puts the issue into perspective.
Some of the figures that are thrown up by that research include things like on a daily basis, there's one woman who's permanently disabled, I think 43 women who are injured, and 71 who lose consciousness as a result of intimate partner violence. So when you sit and think about that's happening today somewhere in our quite small country with our quite small population, then you realize the scale and extent of the problem that we're facing.
Teaiwa says the media plays a role in changing the norms of domestic abuse.
For a long time, it's been left to the NGOs to do the work. The good thing is that the media does seek out comment from NGOs like the Fiji Women's Crisis Centre, and I think there is space for the media to raise a few more questions. The media can play a role in changing the norm, and saying, no, this is not acceptable as a norm, and we should be raising questions, changing attitudes towards women's safety, changing attitudes that we have about the acceptability of men behaving violently.
But both agree we all have a part to play.
I think we all do. I don't think it sits with any one sector, but I think that there is a lot of information out there that the media can draw on.
So yes, it's a problem, but it's a shared problem, and we all have to take responsibility for it. I feel like we need a holistic approach to this problem, which takes care of the abusers as much as it takes care of the so-called victims, right? And the reason I say so-called is not because I don't believe they're victims, but it's because we don't want to just keep painting them as victims that need help. What we want is to have an empowered society where we can all hold each other to account. If we turn all our men and abusers into demons, if we say the only thing to do is lock them up, we haven't improved anything.
The difficulty in changing these attitudes, Teaiwa says, comes with tackling domestic violence as a taboo subject.
So what we've got is this normalization of family violence, intimate partner violence is just considered a norm. In the Solomon Islands, we hear the statistics are 64% of women experience violence between from girlhood to womanhood. When Losana was tragically killed, Shamima Ali raised the same statistic for Fiji. She said the rate was 64% in Fiji, and that's a pretty high rate. That's over half the women in a country.
And the key here is open communication.
A lot of our problem in Pacific families is just not being able to communicate, because we struggle with how to communicate what we're experiencing, how we communicate what we're thinking. It's a cultural shift we need to make.
And Chetty believes McGowan has helped to break the silence.
She's helped spark a moment here where people are talking about it, and it might be a moment where we can have a bit of a widespread conversation about this issue of intimate partner violence in particular.
Both Chetty and Teaiwa hope McGowan's story can spark the change.
What I think it's really done is reinvigorated people's commitments to working on this issue. Not just the women's rights advocates who are already in this field, but many of those, particularly including men also, who have known her through other fields and who have really now experienced what intimate partner violence does.
Unfortunately, it sometimes takes the extremes that happened to Losana. We don't want that to be the reason we have these conversations, but if her death does give us this opportunity to reflect on who we are as a people and what we're willing to accept in our families and in our societies, then her death wouldn't have been in vain.